Hi, everyone. Welcome to a rapid response data briefing, Understanding the Food Security Supplement. I'm Steve Hayward, Communications Manager at the Food Research and Action Center. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few brief housekeeping items. We expect this webinar to run about 30 minutes. We are recording the presentation and will send the recording and slides in a follow-up email. Closed captioning is available. To turn captions on, click Show CC in the bottom taskbar and select English as the spoken language. At the end of the presentation, we should have time for at least one question. Please enter your questions using the Q&A tab also in the bottom taskbar at any time during the webinar. With that, I'll pass it off to Beth Jerez, Vice President of the Association of Public Data Users. Take it away, Beth.
Thank you, Stephen, and welcome everyone. As Stephen mentioned, I'm here representing the Association of Public Data Users, and I want to welcome you all to this rapid response data briefing on the Food Security Supplement co-hosted by the Food Research Action Center, DataIndex.us, AppDo, and Population Reference Bureau. Given the pace of changes in data across the federal government, we created this rapid response series for raising awareness about potential risks to public data and, most importantly, how you can take action. We'll be sharing some specific actions today, and we'll follow up on that information via email at the conclusion of this event. We have, as Stephen mentioned, just 30 minutes together today, but if you have questions, please put those in the Q&A box. If we have time left at the end of our 30 minutes, we'll try to answer a question or two. If we do not have time, we will include as many answers as possible as we can in our email follow-up. And today we have an all-star panel. Each of our panelists holds multiple distinguished roles, but we have just 30 minutes, so I'm going to pick just one for each of them. Ronette Breifel is a senior fellow retired from Mathematica with deep expertise in food security. Gina Platanino is the interim SNAP director of the Food Research and Action Center. Ali Hard is the Director of Public Policy at the National WIC Association. Melanie Klein is a data scientist at DataIndex.us, and Megan Morey is former Senior Advisor for Data Policy at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. And together, they'll walk us through the highlights of what's in the food security supplement and how it's used, why it matters for hunger and nutrition policy, what's at risk if the data stop flowing, and how you can take action to save this critical public resource. So without further ado, Ronette, I'm going to start with you. Given your expertise in food security, measurement, nutrition policy, and public health, can you give us an overview of what's in the food security supplement?
I'd be glad to. Thanks very much for including me. The Food Security Supplement is the primary source of comprehensive annual national and state level statistics on food insecurity in the United States. It's been collected since 1995. It's sponsored by the U.S. Department of Agriculture as a supplement to the current population survey, which is the primary source of labor statistics in the country. The Food Security Supplement is an efficient data collection as it's connected to a large ongoing survey with a large representative sample. 54,000 households were interviewed in 2023, and thus the Food Security Supplement doesn't need to be a separate survey that would be a separate data collection and much more costly. The data are collected nationwide with representative data for states and data applications using sociodemographics that can be applied to counties and localities. The survey is typically conducted in the month of December, with data released 9 months later in the next September. As many of you know who are involved in national data collection or waiting for a report to come out, 9 months is a very quick data reporting time for data to be released, very short time. How is food security measured? It's measured with an 18-item food survey measure, a questionnaire, that's added to the current population survey. 10 questions are asked of adults and 8 more if there are children in the household. So an 18-item instrument. Plus, this current population survey supplement has questions on food spending, food assistance and SNAP, school meals, WIC, other emergency food use, and hardships such as visiting pantries. Next slide, please. There are rumors that the food security supplement is redundant, but that's really not true. When the 18-item instrument was developed back in the 1980s and 1990s by an interagency federal working group, along with academics and policy researchers, the intent was always to include a food security measure in multiple national surveys and evaluation studies, much as you might have race ethnicity as a variable or a poverty index. There have been about 10 other national surveys that have asked something about food insecurity, but only about 2 are in the field now. Some of the issues with why there's so little data beyond the CPS supplement that was planned is that the past surveys were periodic. For example, the American Housing Survey was asked in 2015 and 2019. Some surveys were only conducted periodically on certain age groups, like children, for example. The early childhood longitudinal studies last collected data on food security in children in 2017 and 2016. The 2 surveys that are in the field collecting food security right now are the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. They only survey about 5,000 individuals a year, and the National Health Interview Survey, which interviews about 27,000 adults and 9,000 children. However, the Health Interview Survey only asks the adult questions. The NHANES sample is small, and it would take several years merged together to have a robust data set in order to do food security at the level that the food security supplement and the CPS has been reporting. So there is not another data set that's readily available. The data may be included in potentially other national surveys, but they may not be a priority to be released by that agency. Therefore, the food security supplement is the comprehensive source of annual, national, state, and local data on food insecurity, and really critical for assessing program needs across geographic and demographic groups during a time when economics and participation in food assistance programs are changing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Renette, for that overview. Gina, I'm going to move on to you. You've spent much of your career working on reducing hunger in the United States and are deeply familiar with food security data. Can you tell us why the food security supplement is so important?
I think Renette, thank you, everyone. I think Renette did an excellent job of setting it out as the most comprehensive measure of food insecurity. And I wanted to start with this because this calls back to the 1980s, where our benefits were similar to what's going on. Everything was under attack, TANF, SNAP, and so on. And those direct actions correlated with an increase in food insecurity. And people from the administration, including an attorney from the Reagan administration, said, well, I don't know of any authoritative figures that there are hungry children. I've heard a lot of anecdotal stuff, but I haven't heard of any authoritative figures, right? And so because of that, FRAC led a campaign on ensuring that there was a measurement, that there was food insecurity, that you couldn't just say anecdotes, so that you couldn't have the federal government ignore it, that you couldn't have policymakers ignore the reality of individuals, of children struggling to be able to access food, right? So it provides the only consistent long-term national data, food access, affordability, which is so important as we see now, where we have our food that costs more than 2.7% more than it did at the same time this year, and adequacy. How are people accessing? And it is important for us at FRAC and in other places because it allows us to identify the gaps, target resources, and assess progress. Next slide, please. So for us specifically for SNAP and our other programs is, look, SNAP is the first line of defense against hunger. And July 4th, it experienced the biggest cuts in history that we are seeing. And these food security reports are able to track how effectively SNAP is working, how other things within the economy, whether there's places is impacting it. It shows that when participation is properly measured, SNAP improves food security and therefore it reduces the number of households that report hunger or skip meals. Without this report, there will be no reliable annual measure to determine whether SNAP and other nutrition programs, including school meals, are protecting households from hunger or whether policy changes are causing harms. It also allows us to track food insecurity by state. And this is incredibly important because it reveals how local economies, housing costs, and state level policies affect food access. So we do know that states that have made SNAP more available, that have created progressive policies, have a less rate of food insecurity than states that are not. And it'll help us track in the future the impact that HR 1 will have. It also, like I said, identify states that have a higher food hardship and why all so that federal state responses can be tailored. And this state level visibility ensures accountability and prevents hunger from being hidden, being a national averages. And more importantly, next slide, the report uses household food security spending data that compares it to the Thrifty Food Plan. We know that HR 1 also froze the Thrifty Food Plan in terms of not allowing it to increase. And that sets the benchmark used to set benefit levels. In 2023, for example, the typical household spent 17% more than the TFP cost, showing that even at minimal cost, a healthy diet remains out of reach for many families. And so these findings help us provide evidence base of adjusting benefits so that SNAP truly meets nutritional and cost of living needs. And I'll turn it over to my colleague who will move the.
Thank you so much, Gina. And Allie, I think we're moving over to you, and just to give people a little bit of background, you've spent years focused on ensuring that women, children, and families have adequate nutrition. So can you share your perspective on why the food security supplement is so important?
Thanks, Beth. Can we go to the next slide? Okay. Thank you. So Gina did a great job of talking about why this is so important for advocacy and our efforts to support strong policies that increase food security for families. I'm just going to talk a little bit more about this from a WIC perspective. So a few points I want to make, and I also just want to give credit before I kind of dive in here. I want to give some credit to colleagues who have helped me out in understanding why this is so important for WIC. This is a piece that we put out a statement about and are very concerned about the impact on WIC, and want to appreciate, like I said, the colleagues who've helped me to fully understand that. So a quick shout out to Dr. Lauren Au and Shelley Verplug, who recently retired from ERS, who helped me to dive in a little bit more here. So I want to highlight, first of all, the household food security scale has been adopted, and there is a shorter version, and it's also been added to many federal and non-federal surveys. So this, the supplement itself the impact has kind of been amplified over the years, and it's administered in a lot of different places. And that's helped us to gather more information about food security, hunger, and its impact on Americans. So that is just important to note, this broad reach, and losing also the ability for, I think ERS in particular, the Economic Research Service at USDA, to continue working on that is something we're very concerned about, because they do regularly take a look at the instrument to think about, how might it need to be adapted. Another example of a way that's been adapted and used in other places is the Hunger Vital Signs survey. That's something that is used in medical offices to get a quick measure of the family's food security status. So that's really important. We also know that many WIC researchers are using data from the Household Food Security Survey and comparing that to data that they are collecting as part of their research. So it provides sort of a benchmark, and that allows us to really understand the impact of programs like WIC. I also want to note that for WIC in particular, there is no other national food security survey that assesses child level food security. And as Gina mentioned, that state level information is really critical for us too. And right now, one of the things, in addition to watching HR1, another thing that's happening in the WIC world is that there is a big update to the WIC food packages. States are undergoing that update right now. It's due by April of this coming year. And part of that is there's been a significant increase in the overall amount of benefits. So in particular with fruits and vegetables, there is a big increase there. And so the ability to kind of look at the impact of those policy changes really relies on having this national data set that's ongoing. And so the disruption is something that we are very, very concerned about. And I'll turn it back to you, Beth.
Thank you, Allie. Melanie, I'm going to turn it over to you. I know you've been keeping an eagle eye on threats to public data through the Data Index project, and based on your assessment, what are the risks?
Thanks, Beth. So at dataindex.us, we've been assessing the risks facing federal datasets using 6 key indicators. So today I'm going to walk through how these apply to the food security supplement. Starting with the bad news, we're of course all here today because on September 20th, USDA announced the termination of the food security supplement and the household food security reports. As Ronette mentioned, we know that none of the 11 surveys that incorporate USDA food security survey modules can actually replace the food security supplement. While USDA recently claimed that it will use more timely and accurate data sets available, in its own information collection request approved by OMB just this past April, the agency admitted that these related surveys, quote, do not provide suitable data for timely and reliable monitoring of the prevalence and severity of food insecurity in the nation's households and in critical subpopulations, end quote. On the next issue of whether this dataset is aligned with administration priorities, USDA made its position pretty clear, characterizing this survey as politicized and fear-mongering. Collecting food security data isn't inherently partisan, but it's become a target because it can expose when policies aren't working. And this decision comes at a critical time, as new SNAP requirements could leave millions of Americans without food assistance, and now we won't have the data to understand how they're affected. Even though the data are extremely valuable to programs like SNAP and WIC, the lack of statutory requirement leaves the collection vulnerable to political decisions. Unfortunately, that time has come, as USDA's spokesperson justified the termination by saying the report was non-statutory and unnecessary to carry out the work of the department. The survey is authorized, though. It falls under USDA and ERS's broad authority to conduct research and collect statistics on U.S. food system, consumers, and human nutrition. Additionally, while it doesn't directly name the food security supplement, it's worth noting that the Evidence Act, signed by President Trump in 2019, directs statistical agencies to improve, not weaken, data and evidence for policymaking. Considering this dataset costs less than $1 million a year, yet informs more than $100 billion in SNAP funding, the return on investment is huge, both in cost and in guidance it provides for programs that communities rely on. When it comes to staffing, the Wall Street Journal reported that around a dozen USDA employees working in economic research, including some who work on the food security supplement and report, were placed on indefinite administrative leave shortly after the survey was canceled. At the same time, it's also well known that USDA is undergoing a reorganization that will likely mean more personnel losses. So both of these developments leave us in a place of uncertainty right now. Moving on to some slightly better news, the data going back to 1995 and the interactive charts are still available, at least for now. And USDA has said it plans to release the 2024 report on October 22nd, covering the last full year of the Biden administration. So mark your calendars for that. And lastly, on data quality, the food security supplement has remained reliable across administrations, even though USDA recently claimed it's biased and subjective. Looking back at USDA's information collection request approved just this April, the survey was renewed with no changes to the methodology or questionnaire, which speaks to its consistency. Clearly, USDA's announcement is a setback for the food security supplement, but based on this risk assessment, there are still some angles that we can use to make the case for why these data are essential for delivering more effective programs for American communities. So with that, Beth, I'll turn it back to you so we can hear how everyone can get involved.
Thank you so much, Melanie. And now that we've heard all of that bad news, we don't want to end on that note. So Megan, I'm going to invite you, the person I always turn to when I need guidance on data advocacy, to share what, if anything, can people do to help support or bring back the food security supplement.
Thank you so much, Beth. An organizer at heart, I always love an action opportunity whenever I see something changing that the federal government is doing. And normally whenever a federal agency makes any kind of change to a federal data collection, they ask us for our input. They ask us what we think and receive those public comments and then use our input as part of their decision-making process. But they're not technically required to do that when they're canceling a survey. So in this case, USDA is not formally soliciting our feedback, but we're going to give it to them anyway. So we've created a form, which we are linking for you in the chat. If you'd like to weigh in, please just click on that link. Tell us what you think. We'll aggregate everyone's comments and send them out to each State Department of Agriculture. We hope that those state agriculture leaders will be able to communicate more directly with USDA about their need for this data going forward. Now, that's just about the data collection. We know that people would also like to weigh in on the cancellation of the report. And I know our colleagues at FRAC have set up a portal for folks who'd like to weigh in there. Do you all want to give us a little run through of how to participate in that?
Thank you, Megan. It's super easy. We will do a follow-up email with all of this information as well. And all you have to do is click on it, put your information, and it automatically sends your information and your request to your member of Congress, letting them know why this program is pivotal and why they need to advocate to ensure that it continues. Passing it over back to you, Megan.
Fabulous. And on the next slide, great. We also know that there is currently scheduled a USDA data users meeting. That meeting is free and open to the public. There's an open forum for participants, so there may be some opportunity for you to weigh in about this survey and report at that users meeting. If you're available to join, it's on October 21st from 1 to 4:30. And Beth just stuck the registration form in the chat. You may be wondering, will this meeting still happen if we are still in a government shutdown? We don't know, but it's likely to get rescheduled if it doesn't happen on the 21st. So you may still want to register so you get information about the event directly from USDA. And with that, I'll toss it back to Beth.
Thank you so much. One more slide, please. Last but certainly not least, we know you are all here for the food security supplement today because you care deeply about nutrition policy and hunger abatement policy in the United States, but there may be other data sets that you care about. If that is true, you can follow along at dataindex.us, which I will put that link in the chat as well, to sign up for our newsletter, and you will get weekly, Megan goes through the entire Federal Register and reads through to see about these potential changes that are coming down the line. We are actively monitoring data sets to alert you of potential changes and opportunities to take action. So highly encourage you to do that. And I want to thank all of our panelists for completing, not quite in record time, but with time to answer a couple of questions from the Q&A. So Melanie, one question I saw a couple of times is this question about what's happening with the 2024 data that were collected in December of 2024. So do you want to share just a little bit about that with our audience?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So there's pretty limited information on the data release. What I have seen is that USDA spokesperson said that the 2024 report will be released on October 22nd. Of course, with the shutdown, that may have some delay to it, but our hope is that with the report, the data would be published as well. The issue is that in USDA's original press release, there was a lot of conflation between the survey and the report. So ultimately, we'll have to see what's released, but ideally the data would come with the report.
Thank you for that. And there were some other questions about the historical data and where to get that. We will make sure that references to where you can download historical data are included in our meeting follow-up as well. So I want to thank all of our panelists and for participating in this, and strongly encourage all of you to take action. So whether it is following up on that, on the call to action about the report, whether it is submitting a comment to our comment portal so we can get those to the heads of agriculture at the state level, please go and make your voice heard. And thank you all for your time today, and join me in thanking our panelists for sharing their time and expertise with us.